In today's video, I'm going to explain to you why you personally need to invest money in your own career and your professional development. And I'll give you my opinion as to why BMS companies are not able to invest in your career. So I'm going to break this down to two parts in this one video. In the beginning, I'm going to explain to you how if you invest in your career, it'll put you in control of a job interview rather than the BMS company being in control of that job interview. The second part will be my opinion as to why BMS companies are not able to invest in training. I think it's important that you watch this video through to the end, because if we understand the problem from their point of view, then we can look at how to fix this problem. Why should you invest in yourself? Let's imagine you are a BMS service technician and you're sitting in a job interview. Imagine if you're sitting there and you can prove and demonstrate that you can consistently save energy in buildings, you can consistently earn additional revenue to your employer, the BMS company, every single year, and all your customers are happy, building owners and facility managers. If you can demonstrate that and prove that, I'm telling you now, you are going to control that interview. It's not going to be the BMS company controlling the interview, you will be controlling the interview. If you saw that video we did before about where have all the BMS people gone, if you haven't watched that after you've watched this one, we have always been in a situation where there's a lack of people entering into our industry. We've always had that, not enough people coming through university or whatever and coming into the BMS industry. But what we've never had before is we haven't had a situation where there are people leaving our industry every single day. You are now in a position to negotiate your salary and your working terms. Everything has changed. It's not like it has been for the last 100 years. Let's say, for example, I was going for an interview at a BMS company, and let's say as a national engineering manager. So for those of you that have been following my channel for a couple of years and on LinkedIn that know me, do you think that I'm going to be sitting there and allowing the BMS company to control that meeting and set the terms? No ways. I'll be sitting there and saying to them, here are all the things I can help you with. I have a track record of solving these problems. This much money I want every year. These amount of days I want to work from home or in the office. I will certainly be the person interviewing them. They won't be interviewing me, I'll be interviewing them. And I'll be saying like, these are my terms. If that doesn't work for you, no problem. Thank you very much and good luck. Let me pause for a second for those of you that are not going to watch this video through to the end. If you're a BMS service technician or BMS project engineer and you want to take control of your career and not leave it up to your employer, please see in the description below, because you and I can raise your authority in the industry. In the second part of the video, why doesn't your BMS company train you? This is more my opinion, it's not a fact, but I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on out there. So I think one of the problems is that if your manager pays money to train you, they might want to do that. Then they're going to train everybody else in your team. And then they're going to train everybody else in that branch. And if somebody from another state finds out that this company or this branch is investing in their engineers, then that company has to train all of those engineers in the other state, and the next state, and the next state, in the next state. No BMS company or manufacturer has a training budget to train thousands and thousands of engineers. They don't have that sort of money available. And I would guess that over the years, BMS companies have gotten burnt in the past, and they've realized that they shouldn't start something unless they can finish it. So you go to your manager and say, please can you pay for training? And they're thinking, I don't want to open that can of worms. So that's the first thing that I think is one of the reasons why BMS companies don't properly invest in training of their engineers and managers. Now, of course, they are training you on the product. They will train you on how to create a BMS, graphics, alarms, trends, software programming, and they will train you how to maintain a BMS, create the thing and maintain it, but they don't have budget for training on how to properly service a BMS, how to design a BMS. Usually they don't do project management, how to commission a BMS, those sort of things don't really get taught. The second problem financially is that obviously very large BMS companies, they have to pay for factories and lots of warehouses, and in the warehouses is a forklift they've got to buy, and the forklift driver and administration people, there's all those costs. They have to have, large human resources departments to help manage all these engineers, all the staff. They probably have like research and development and technical support departments, all these things that a smaller company doesn't have. And they also, usually have layers and layers and layers of management to deal with all that, to make that machine work. And then on top of that financial pressure to pay for all of those overheads, they also have to have profits at the end of the year for the shareholders. So a smaller BMS company, if they're going through tough times like it's COVID, and they struggle through the year and they just break even, that's great. They survived, they broke even, they paid their bills, they paid their wages, they got through tough times. Big manufacturers do not have the luxury of breaking even. Big companies have to have year on year increased profits being released to their shareholders. So imagine you are the branch manager of a global BMS company. You're the branch manager of your state. What are you going to do? Are you going to cut the training budget, or are you going to cut the profits to the shareholders and lose your job? You're not going to do that. You and I, we're both going to cut the training budget, get the profits to shareholders, achieve our KPIs, and get a bonus, or at least keep your job. BMS companies do not have large buckets of cash hanging around to pay for the training of thousands and thousands of engineers. And it sucks, and it's frustrating, but it is what it is, and it isn't going to change. I'm just going through the edit, and I've just watched this through and realized that when I recorded this last week Sunday, I was pretty much completely focusing on the financial constraints around why training doesn't happen. I'm just sort of watching it through here a week later, and I've realized there were two things I forgot to mention. One is a massive thing, and the second one is a small thing. So what I want to say was, when I'm talking to branch managers about doing BMS training, they always say the following thing to me. They always say this every time. Look, Bryce, we would love to do training. We really like the course, but we're very busy at the moment and we can't afford to take our engineers off of the projects. Now, I would sort of reword that in my own words to be, Bryce, we really love these courses. They look amazing. You are amazing, but we are currently massively overloaded. We have a shortage of staff. We're already failing on projects. We're not hitting deadlines, and our customers are screaming at us already. I cannot take our engineers off of the projects. We're in big trouble as it is. I completely get that. I was once a project manager. I was once a design engineer. I've been in those situations where there's no time to do anything. You're just putting out fires every day. I completely get that. Another part of me thinks to myself, well, if we did some training, there'd be less mistakes, less rework, and you'd probably save money and probably have more time anyway. The engineers would see problems coming before they got there, and we'll be designing out issues that we know are going to be issues later on the job anyway. The other thing that happens, not as much, is I'm talking to a BMS company and they want to do the training, they've got budgets all good, but the problem is that the person that needs to arrange the training, the branch manager or the team leader or the ops manager, whoever it is, they are heavily overloaded with work. And every morning they turn their laptop on and there's 5 or 6 damaging emails in there that need sorting out immediately, and they're just putting out fires every day. In those situations, what happens is they're just too busy to actually arrange the training. They're too busy to get lifecycle controls on their procurement system and approved, fee proposal from me, raise a purchase order, and then choose who does the training, who doesn't do the training, and who's covering who. So sometimes that task is quite a big task, and they just don't have time to do it. So sometimes training doesn't happen. It just sort of fizzles away because the person doesn't have time to even organize the whole thing. But that happens not as often. The main issues are there's no money, and the BMS engineers are so overloaded that they don't have time for training. Those are the two main issues. Let's get back into it. If you're a BMS service technician or a BMS project engineer, and you want to take control over your career and your professional development and your future, and you don't want to leave it up to your employer and whatever budget they may or may not have, see in the description below. You and I can raise your authority in this industry. You will go into job interviews and you will negotiate the terms of your employment. Those days from the last 100 years where companies, not just BMS companies, any companies, where the companies are dominating those interviews, those days are over. Individuals that can prove their value and the return on investment of their salary are going to control those interviews. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.